Hello and welcome to India Business Hour. I'm Shireen Bhan and you can now watch us live on our YouTube page and of course on television night after night. Here's a look at the top stories we're tracking at this hour. The market ends at a record high. The Nifty scales Mount 20,000 for the first time. Financials along with Reliance Industries, the major contributors. Prime Minister Modi holds bilateral talks with the Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. Both nations signed about 50 MOUs worth over $3 billion.
By morning 6 a.m., when I got up, I had confirmation from EU, I had confirmation from Germany, I had confirmation from Canada, I had confirmation. So it was taking brinkmanship to its last.
It was a gutsy, courageous brinkmanship, says India's G20 Sherpa Amitabh Kant on the tense negotiations that led to the consensus on the New Delhi Leaders' Declaration. Also adds the joint statement is the voice of moderation. That's an exclusive.
And finally, we brought China together into this and we put pressure and everyone agreed. And 20 countries agreeing on the Russia-Ukraine issue. Unbelievable.
The G20 Sherpa also reveals France, Germany and a few others had issues with the Delhi Declaration but were made to fall in line. Adds that India got China and the US to sit together to iron out differences over a bilateral issue which finally led to a breakthrough in forging a consensus. IMF Chief Kristalina Georgieva says that the India-Middle East-Europe corridor is very important to reinforce supply chains, warns that trade is growing slower than the global economy for the first time and such corridors can ensure that trade remains a growth engine. India and UK are closer to a free trade agreement than ever before, but this doesn't mean there will be a deal, says the UK Chancellor Jeremy Hunt. Also adds listing of Indian companies on the London Stock Exchange is being discussed with an urgency and determination coming from top political levels. That's an exclusive. Death toll from the powerful earthquake that rocked Morocco on Friday rises to more than 2,400. Over 3 lakh people have been affected by the quake as per the UN estimate. Residents of Marrakesh sleep on the streets for the third night in a row as rescue operations continue. Enough of this dilly-dally business, warns the Supreme Court. SpiceJet Chairman Ajay Singh gives him one last chance for payment of dues to Credit Suisse. The Apex Court warns of drastic action if Singh fails to pay before the 15th of September. Jet Airways founder Naresh Goyal breaks down several times in court during his remand hearing in a money laundering case, says he has multiple ailments and requests the court to let him be admitted in a private hospital. Goyal's lawyer argues that no money laundering took place. The business tycoon's 10-day ED custody ends today. Former Andhra Pradesh Chief Minister Chandrababu Naidu remanded to 14 days judicial custody over an alleged corruption case. The Jagan Reddy government places all 21 Telugu Desam Party MLAs under house arrest. Karnataka's Private Transport Association calls off its strike after the state government agrees to fulfill some of their demands, but the government remains firm on the scheme allowing free travel for women in non-premium government buses. Normal life disrupted in large parts of Bengaluru. The rain deficit of 11% so far makes it the first below normal monsoon for India in 8 years. The Met expects some improvement in September to make up for the August deficit to some extent.
We are, as Surabhi said, 35 points away. So, yeah, I mean, 19,964 is where we are at.
20,000 on the
right
Nifty.
Yeah.
We can finally say it, after a wait of 50+ sessions, we've traversed the distance, traversed the journey, and the 20,000 mark, the next decade, the 20,000 decade is here.
All milestones are good, and particularly a happy occasion when the milestones are on the positive side.
I think this is time where, yes, on one side we should celebrate 20,000 Nifty, but please remember that this is also time to exercise some amount of caution.
Well, a record-breaking day on the Lal Street. All major indices hitting a new peak in trade today. The Nifty crossing 20,000 for the first time, gaining over 176 points. The sensex gained over 500 points, going past 67,000. That is the story today. The Nifty finally closing just shy of that, but 20,000 is here, and that is a new record. The mid-cap rally also continuing with the mid-cap index up by almost 460 points, and that index also hitting another record high in trade today. Now, the Nifty's taken just 52 sessions to rally from 19,000 to the 20,000 mark. For comparison, it took the index 425 sessions to hit 19,000 from 18,000. That was the journey between 18,000 and 19,000, and that's the journey between 19 and 20,000. PSU banks have led the charge over the last few weeks, with the PSU bank index gaining over 20%. The Nifty PSU index, along with real estate, metals and IT, the top gainer. That's the picture on what has outperformed in this 1,000-point rally. So we're at a record high. What next? Prashant is here with some interesting data. Prashant, where do we go from here?
You know, thanks very much for that. So finally, the wait is over and we made a new all-time high, which the previous high was 19,992. And of course, I mean, consequently, after that, we hit that 20,000 level as well. So, you know, it's a number, right? 20,000. As you keep going higher, you will scale newer and newer peaks. But it's also, you know, you move from sort of talking and speaking out the Nifty values in 19,000 something to 20,000 something. So in that sense, you know, it does feel good. Let's just quickly take a look at valuations and where we stand right now. And this is a very cursory first cut kind of look. On a one-year forward basis now, as of today's close, we traded 18.5 times on Nifty. If you look at the 10-year average, that is at about 17.5 odd times. So yes, we are slightly higher, but I have to say, this is the average, right? The last 10-year average. If you take a look at the peaks, I mean, the various peaks that the Nifty has had all the way starting from, you know, January 2008, you know, the one which we saw after the current government took power in 2014, in 2018, you know, the high values would be much higher. So this is the average, and as compared to the average, this does look slightly up. But as compared to the previous weeks, I mean, I think we're still some distance away. Just a quick look at what has contributed to this rally on the Nifty. And what I've done is I've taken percentage contribution from the 31st of March this year. Why 31st of March? Because that's basically when the market really took off. And this is what sort of comes through. What this tells you is that it's not just like one or two or three stocks in the Nifty which has contributed to this 15% rally. It's a bunch of things. It's actually quite well distributed. Reliance has contributed 13%. ICICI Bank has contributed 7.5%. L&T some 7%. ITC, and then there is Bajaj Finance as well. And I could go on, but this kind of gives you the sense that it's many stocks and small contributions coming through. Actually, there is only one stock which dragged on the other side, and that was UPL. Now, this is, you know, a Nifty at 20,000 but. And the but basically is the mid and the small cap part of the market. And this is the reason why many out there believe that perhaps it is time now for large caps, the Nifty type of indices, to do better and better as compared to broader markets. Look at the Nifty is up 15% since the 31st of March. Mid cap index is 38 and the small cap index is up 44%. Right? I mean, so far outperforming what the Nifty or the large caps have done. And that's the reason why many veterans believe that perhaps sectors, large weighted sectors like banks, large cap IT, etc., are places to be, which perhaps will do a little better going forward. Back to you.
All right, Prashant, many thanks. That's the Nifty at 20,000. And of course, the market internals, as Prashant was pointing out. Now, the broader markets have been the stars of the show. The mid-cap index continued to post record close. The small-cap index also surging over 1% today, continuing its upward trend. Kotak Institutional Equity says there is no meaningful change in fundamentals of most of these companies, suggesting to investors that stay cautious, something that we just heard from Prashant as well. Nilesh Shah also had a word of caution. Listen in.
I think this is time where, yes, on one side we should celebrate 20,000 Nifty, but please remember that this is also time to exercise some amount of caution. As you go down capitalization, valuation should become cheaper. In current market, it is becoming expensive. Lower the market cap, higher the valuation. Generally, such kind of valuation don't last long. So buy quality, buy stocks at reasonable price, buy stocks with a longer term horizon, not with the momentum, and enjoy the party, but be responsible.
Well, that's sage advice coming in there from Nilesha. Yes, the market's touching record highs, but invest smartly and with caution. Prime Minister Modi and Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman signed close to 50 MOUs worth $3 billion in New Delhi today. The leaders also held talks on expanding trade between both nations and presided over the inaugural session of the India-Saudi Arabia Partnership Council. Also, Saudi official has said that both sides have agreed to set up a joint task force for the early implementation of the West Coast refinery projects. The task force will identify and channelize close to $100 billion investments into various refinery projects.
भारत के लिए सऊदी अरब हमारे सबसे महत्वपूर्ण स्ट्रेटेजिक पार्टनर में से एक है। हमने हमारी करीबी साझेदारी को नेक्स्ट लेवल पर ले जाने के लिए कई इनिशिएटिव की पहचान की है। भारत और सऊदी अरब की मित्रता क्षेत्रीय और वैश्विक स्थिरता, समृद्धि और मानव कल्याण के लिए महत्वपूर्ण है।
I congratulate you on the management of the G20 summit and the initiatives achieved, including the economic corridor linking the Middle East, India and Europe, which require that we work diligently in order to create it into a reality. Today we're working on the future opportunities. There is a huge agenda to be working with. We are working through this council to achieve these accomplishments.
India and Saudi Arabia forging several agreements. Now, the just concluded G20 summit has been a significant diplomatic milestone for the Indian government. The India presidency managed to clinch a consensus on the New Delhi declaration when one wasn't expected. I caught up with India's G20 Sherpa Amitabh Kant to get a sense of what went on during the final days of the drafting. Kant said that they had to prepare 15 drafts before arriving at the final one. That's not all. They even had to ban mobile phones from the Sherpas' meeting room in order to avoid information leakage. Look at what went into ensuring that we did get consensus on the draft.
We had sealed when the Sherpas came into Delhi. We took them about almost 60 kilometers out of Delhi.
To Manesar.
To Manesar. We closed them up and we ensured that there's no leakage of information. And every time we had a meeting on geopolitics, we ensured that no one came with a mobile phone. So there were no
one came with a mobile phone into the meeting room?
Yeah. They could only take a little bit of notes to convey to their leaders. Because the challenge was if the drafts were leaked out to the media, then the whole geopolitical settlement would get wrecked. And it was very important to keep it in close
confidential
secret.
and closed doors.
Yeah. And
how many drafts were there?
I think we worked through about 15 drafts. We started off they all came in on 3rd. The Sherpas had come in by the 4th morning, and we started on the 4th morning with a blank screen and the drafting session, because we could have started with para 3 and 4 of Bali, but I was quite sure if we start with that, we'll never achieve consensus. So we had to start afresh. So I said, keep 3 and 4 in your mind, but we'll do fresh drafting.
Tabula rasa.
Yeah. So we took the screen and I drafted 15 principles. I dictated 15 principles in front of them.
Why do you believe that's the case? Why do you think that India was able to do what you believe the UN Security Council could not have achieved?
I think because India was a voice of moderation. India brought Brazil, South Africa and Indonesia together. We brought all the emerging markets together. We brought Saudi, we brought Mexico, we brought Argentina, all of them together. And finally, we brought China together into this. And we put pressure and everyone agreed. And 20 countries agreeing on the Russia-Ukraine issue. Unbelievable.
You know, on China specifically, and you said that Moscow had a lot of problems even with the final draft that was finally put out. But what about China and the fact that China came on board?
So China, we were constantly in discussion with them bilaterally. We had had several rounds of discussion. They had told us that they will agree to this in case Russia agrees. They were fully backing Russia. They would have not agreed to this if Russia had not agreed. And when we had convinced Russia entirely that it was good for them to fall in line, they had issue till about 3:30 in the morning. So we had to spend time with their negotiators till 3:30 in the morning.
3:30 a.m.
So,
you were talking to the Chinese negotiators?
No, to the Russian negotiators.
Okay.
We convinced them finally, and then we told the Chinese that the Russians have agreed. So Chinese agreed, but they had a bilateral issue with USA. They said that they will agree to this only if that bilateral issue settled with the United States. It had nothing to do with this resolution. It was some other issue. And then we made the Americans and the Chinese sit down in the morning after the meeting had started. The meeting had started, we had a resolution on this, we had a resolution on everything else, but the bilateral issue between USA and Chinese had not been sorted.
Well, a behind-the-scenes account of what went into ensuring that there was consensus, and there was, in fact, a New Delhi declaration. Kant also said that it was gutsy, courageous brinkmanship, those are his words, that saw the tense negotiations leading to the consensus. He added that the document represented the aspirations of the global south, the emerging economies. Take a look.
This was very tough, but I was very fortunate, you know. I was fortunate because I had some very good colleagues. First of all, the Brazilian Mauricio was very good. The South African Zain, the Sherpa, was outstanding international legal expert. And on our side, we had Nagaraj Naidu, who was an outstanding civil servant. He has experience of the United Nations, so he's top class, really top class drafter. And I had Enam Gambhir, who's very motivated, enthusiastic, who was never pessimistic. So always looking forward. So you needed to have a lot of guts, you needed a lot of courage, and you needed to be a risk taker. I just took the risk. In the ultimate analysis, finally, when the last meeting ended in the night, I just told them, this is the draft which my leader has seen. He agrees with it. And I just pulled all the strength of my leader, and that's the Prime Minister. And I said, my leader wants all consensus. He doesn't want a divided G20. He doesn't want a wrecked G20. He wants only a consensus. And this is the final draft with 4 of us. And by that time, Indonesia joined us. This is the best possible draft which we'll green by the morning. So I left it at that at about 12 p.m. in the night. By morning 6 a.m., when I got up, I had confirmation from EU, I had confirmation from Germany, I had confirmation from Canada, I had confirmation. So it was taking brinkmanship to its last. I could do this because I had the full authority and backing of my Prime Minister, who's my leader in this case, and his stature and standing in the international arena is very high. The French had an issue, but I was very sure that Macron will not have the courage to tell my Prime Minister that you change this word into that. So
they had an issue with the final draft.
No, they had some issues. The Germans had some issue, but I made all of them fall in line. You know, so if you go by everybody's, because G7 comprises of 7 nations. They keep coming and telling you, change this, change that, change this, change that. It'll never work. I'd heard them 200 times. What more can I do? You know, so I couldn't have done anything more. I told them, this is the best draft you can ever get. This takes care of all your positions. This takes care of China. This takes care of Russia. This takes care of all emerging markets. And then I had to throttle it down.
Throttle it down you did, Mr. Kant, and at the end of the day, when no consensus seemed possible, you managed to broker one through. But, you know, outside of the New Delhi declaration and the fact that this turned out to not create history in the wrong way, not to be the G20 that didn't actually have a communique out, I want to address 2 of the other big...
So let me just say a little bit on this, because it's a voice of moderation. It's a voice of... there's a lot of voice of the global south in this. Emerging markets have had a say. It's a very balanced draft to my mind. It takes care of everybody's concern. So this should be a piece of document which should really work for everyone.
A voice of moderation. That's the G20 Sherpa Amitabh Kant. Now, a big infrastructure deal was also inked at the G20 summit. The India, Middle East, Europe, US economic corridor, the major rail and shipping project, is aimed at fostering economic growth and to rival China's Belt and Road project. Hormuz joins us now to explain what this new deal means and what its implications can be. Hormuz.
Some big diplomatic announcements were made during the G20 summit in New Delhi over the weekend. But the one that has caught everyone's eye and possibly even stands out among the rest is the India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor, or the IMEC. Now, the IMEC is touted to be a counter to China's ambitious Belt and Road Initiative. So what is the key motto of this corridor? It is to enable goods and services to transit to, from and between India, UAE, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Israel and Europe. Now, the signatories of these deals include countries like India, Italy, France, Germany, the USA, the UAE, Saudi Arabia and the European Union. Now, the IMEC is divided into two corridors. First is the East Corridor, which will connect India to the Arabian Gulf, and the second is the Northern Corridor that will connect the Arabian Gulf to Europe. Now, if we take a look at this map, now let us first clarify that this is not an official map but taken from social media. The corridor may move from Mumbai to Dubai and from there on towards Saudi Arabia and to the Haifa port in Israel, which is owned and operated by the Adani Group. Now, speaking of the Haifa port, it is part of the route, but Israel does not feature as an official signatory in this deal. Why is that so? Well, that is because Israel and Saudi Arabia do not have any diplomatic ties whatsoever as we speak. Saudi Arabia has been opposing any form of ties with Israel until the latter resolves its issues with Palestine. However, overtures are currently being made from both ends to resolve the issues at hand. So how is this corridor going to be useful? Well, the railway line will provide a cost-effective cross-border ship-to-rail transit network and will supplement the existing maritime and road transport routes. It is also expected to increase efficiency, reduce costs, generate jobs and lower greenhouse gas emissions. Now, the participants in this corridor also plan on enabling the laying of cable for electricity and digital connectivity and also laying a pipe for clean hydrogen exports. Lastly, the participants intend to meet in the next 60 days to develop an action plan with the relevant timetable. So that is the IMEC. Diplomacy is touting it to be a game changer, but we await a more detailed fine print over the next 2 months.
Yes, the fine print will be crucial, and as we heard there from Amitabh Kant, the execution is what we will need to watch for very carefully. Free trade agreement talks between India and the UK are closer to being done than ever before. However, more work needs to be done. That's the word in from UK Finance Minister Jeremy Hunt. Speaking exclusively to my colleague Parikshit Luthra, the UK Finance Minister has made it clear that the UK will only sign the deal if it serves Britain's interests. He also added that listing Indian companies on the London Stock Exchange is being discussed with a sense of urgency. Take a look.
The London Stock Exchange to become Europe's NASDAQ, or even better than Europe's NASDAQ, and we want to give that opportunity to Indian companies as well to benefit from being able to raise capital internationally. Well, we've had lots of discussions about timelines, and I always think it jinxes discussions if you start giving a public deadline. But what I can say is that there was an urgency and a determination to conclude these discussions successfully. So there's a really exciting deal to be done, but it's new territory for India, it's new territory for the UK. I think we're closer to a deal than we've ever been. That doesn't mean it's guaranteed we'll get a deal. Rishi Sunak has been very clear, we'll only sign a deal when it's the right deal for the UK.
Well, that is the UK Finance Minister on the proposed UK-India FTA, the negotiations currently underway. Up next on India Business Hour, all the action from the aviation space. Jet Airways founder Naresh Goyal's custody has been extended. The Supreme Court has issued a stern warning to SpiceJet chairman Ajay Singh. That and more when we return. Catch all the news on our Facebook page, on X, on Threads, Instagram and JioCinema. Well, you are watching India Business Hour. The Enforcement Directorate, the custody of Jet Airways founder Naresh Goyal has been extended till the 14th of September. In its remand copy, the ED has said that the accused is not cooperating and is evasive in his statements. Goyal has been permitted calls with his wife twice a day. Remember, the 74-year-old was arrested by the ED on allegations of bank fraud worth 538 crore rupees. So an extension being granted to the ED. The Supreme Court has directed that cash-strapped SpiceJet pay $1.5 million to Credit Suisse by the 15th of September. The court has warned the airline, and I quote, of drastic measures if it does not comply with the order. Ashmit standing by now with the details. Ashmit, strong words coming in from the Apex Court.
Well, indeed, a tough day in court for SpiceJet as well as for Ajay Singh, both of them on the mat with respect to two particular matters, different matters, one in the Supreme Court, the other one in the Delhi High Court. The one in the Supreme Court was the payment dispute with Credit Suisse. Now, this is the matter where in May of 2022, there was a settlement agreement between the two sides where it was agreed that SpiceJet will pay $500,000 every month. That payment schedule has not been complied with, and that's the reason why the Supreme Court in the last hearing had issued a contempt notice against Ajay Singh, which meant that he had to appear in person today before the top court. And well, the Supreme Court chose some harsh words to address Ajay Singh. The Supreme Court said that there is no room for dilly-dallying anymore. They very clearly pointed out that the Supreme Court couldn't care less if the company were to go bankrupt, and to that end has directed SpiceJet to cough up an amount of $1.5 million, and that amount needs to be paid by September 15th, failing which the Supreme Court has said that it will take drastic action against SpiceJet as well as Ajay Singh. Now, that was case number one. The second case is the one before the Delhi High Court. This is the arbitration dispute involving Kalanidhi Maran. In this case, the Marans are seeking outstanding interest dues of 400 crore rupees. The SpiceJet, the airline, is disputing that amount, but nonetheless, the Delhi High Court in the previous hearing had directed for at least 100 crore rupees to be paid. Deadline, September 11th, today. Now, as of today, SpiceJet clarified that it has paid an amount of 62 crore rupees. The balance amount of 38 crore rupees will be paid as of tomorrow. So that's what the Delhi High Court has recorded. Time till tomorrow to SpiceJet to clear that amount of 100 crore rupees. Post that, the Delhi High Court will keep an eye and will take up this case for further hearing on October 3rd.
Ashmit, many thanks for joining us. You can catch all of our news and updates on Facebook, Threads, Instagram and Geo Cinema. You are, of course, watching India Business Hour. Well, there is plenty more that we have on the program for you, including the news that came in from the aviation space, as we just heard there from Ashmit. Well, let's move on to the other news that we are tracking today, and that comes into us from Go First lenders, which have sought another extension to the deadline for bidders to submit expressions of interest for the airlines. Also say the lenders are worried as no strategic suitor has stepped forward yet. Remember, the deadline was previously extended to September 8th. Sources also say that lenders may seek a deadline of last week of September, and the Committee of Creditors is likely to vote on the proposal this week. In national news, supporters of the Telugu Desam Party carried out statewide protests after former Andhra Pradesh Chief Minister Chandrababu Naidu was arrested. The police has placed all 21 TDP legislators under house arrest. The court has remanded Naidu to 14-day judicial custody in a 371 crore rupees skill development scam. Karnataka State Private Transport Association has called off the strike against the Shakti scheme. This after the Transport Minister agreed to meet some of the demands. The Shakti scheme allows free bus travel for women on non-premium government buses. With just 2 months to go for Diwali, the Delhi government has announced a complete ban on the sale of firecrackers to control air pollution. The blanket ban applies to the manufacturing, storage, sale, online delivery and bursting of all firecrackers. The police has been instructed to stop issuing license for firecrackers. The death toll from the powerful earthquake that rocked Morocco on Friday rises to more than 2,400. Over 3 lakh people have been affected by the quake as per the UN estimates. Residents of Marrakesh sleeping on the streets for the 3rd night in a row as rescue operations continue. And finally, Novak Djokovic has equaled Margaret Court's record of 24 Grand Slam singles titles in the Open era. After winning the US Open final last night, the Serb claimed his 4th title at Flushing Meadows, beating Russian Daniil Medvedev in 3 sets. What a victory there for Djokovic. And with that, it is time for us to wrap up this edition of India Business Hour. Thanks very much for watching. The news continues here on CNBC TV 18. We're right back with you.